All right. Good afternoon. It is July 4th. Actually, I'm just going to put one in. It's July 4th, and I need to switch this to my AirPods. There we go. I took a couple days to do a little spontaneous trip with Larissa and my parents down to Crater Lake, and it was wonderful. I was actually intending to still do this from my cell phone because we had a pretty long drive, and found out that YouTube won't let me do it unless I have way more subscribers than I ever plan on having. So I just decided I'd have to put it off a couple days, and do it when I got back. And then I decided to sleep in this morning, so I didn't do it this morning. But here we are. It's July 4th. It's 2 p.m. on Pacific time. Benjamin helped remind me today that probably it'd be helpful if I send the time zones out when I send the text messages out that I'm going to do this. So I'll do that. Larissa and I are just going to lay low today, be with the dogs while all the fireworks are going off so they're not too anxious, and continue on in our watching of all the Marvel's movie. We're doing it actually in chronological order and moving through all those, so we'll probably knock a few out today and cook and just enjoy being together. I thought about kind of hijacking today and just reflecting on July 4th in general. There's a lot to talk about there around nationalism and America, things I love about America, things I don't love about America, pitfalls I fall into around reacting to patriotism, and ways that I've realized I fall into it in unhelpful ways. But I'm not. I'm going to stick with the plan. So anyways, we'll go ahead and get started with that. Again, if you're watching this one for the first time, if this is the first one you're watching, you can go back to the first one, which is the one I talked about, managing sexual energy. And you can see a larger explanation for what I'm doing. But basically, I gathered a whole bunch of topics from friends and family. I've got everyone's name in a hat that gave me topics, and I'm just pulling one out. And I've got the list on my phone of all the topics and going down the line and taking one at a time and doing kind of a long format, spontaneous reflection on one of those topics. And just to kind of have a little bit of a video journal of my thoughts and perspectives at 33 in the year 2020. A lot of interesting things going on, and a lot of challenging things that we're facing as human race. Let me go ahead and make this big. I got a little bit of allergies today, so if I sneeze, I'm sorry. Hopefully it's not too loud. Hope y'all are well. Hope everyone is doing well. Looks like we have one person on. If you want to comment on the live chat, or if you're on your phone, shoot me a text and let me know if the audio and video is streaming well. That'll be super helpful. Okay. Let's see. Let's go with this one. Carl's. All right, Karley. I don't remember what yours was, but I remember being excited about it. Oh, yeah. Now I remember what it was. It was manifesting things. Let me pull it up so I can get it. Manifestation or law of attraction. Is it real? Well, my first response to is it real is try it for yourself. I think it's a whole lot more fun to see if things are real for ourselves than taking other people's word for it. And the law of attraction and manifesting things, having desires, whether they're, surfacey desires or really deep longings. If you're wanting to try to see if it's possible to actually go through the process of setting the intention, moving through different things and bringing them into reality, probably a better thing to try and actually see if it's real than just take people's word for it. My experience is that it's very real. I think this is a principle, a reality that we can kind of find in a lot of different places, in different language and different ideology. In the Bible, it talks about that we kind of reap what we sow. And I think my favorite part about this spiritual principle and the way it's talked about in the Bible is that it actually points back to nature, which I think nature, if we're able to notice it, can be our kind of first platform for really exploring what is true and what is real, and deeper patterns and ways of understanding what is real and what is not real through observing nature. And in this specific text, talking about the things that we sow, the things that we plant, will eventually reap a harvest. So if we're planting hateful things and we're sowing in, not so good stuff, that will eventually grow and fruit will be born from that, and it won't be good. In some of the Eastern traditions, this is kind of the baseline understanding of karma. It's kind of this element of causality where we do something, there's kind of a chain reaction, and we can see it really easily in nature. You plant something, and eventually something will grow. I mean, I guess technically the elements have to be right for it, but we can take this principle into this idea of manifesting things in our life we want, and attracting things that we desire, and realize that one of the most powerful things that we have access to, if we're willing to do the work, is our minds. And there's a whole slew of things that we can begin to do with our minds to start to bring into our lives the things that we truly want. I don't really feel a need to unpack a lot of the ideology behind the idea of the law of attraction and manifesting our destiny, which, different language that's used. Abraham Hicks is kind of a source that you can tap into and really understand some of the spiritual principles behind it. But what I have personally seen to be true, to kind of simplify all that down and boil it down, is that when we learn to become aware of our inner world and the things that are going on inside of us, and we slow down enough to really take stock in it and see what's going on, and then be reflective about our life and where our life is and what's going on, we can begin to notice that we end up creating our external realities based on what's going on inside of us. And so when we realize that and we see it for ourselves and we figure it out, our kind of next arena to move into would be that of learning to take care of our inner world really well, because that's ultimately going to end up manifesting what's outside of us. And so this whole journey of learning to garden our souls, our mind and emotions, and that kind of inner content of our life is really important. And this is where I would kind of, if I was going to write a book on, manifesting our lives, this is kind of the language that I would use, would be gardening our inner lives. And it's the way I've approached my religious life and my spiritual life, is really no more or less than using that framework and that ideology to do the inner work of really taking care of and growing the things inside of me that I want to grow, and weeding out the things that I want to weed out, and making sure there's a integrity between the inside and the outside, and noticing that flow of the things that I'm opening myself up to, whether it's things that are coming in through my eyes or things I'm hearing, or the environments that I'm around and the things that I'm absorbing, paying attention to how that's kind of moving and flowing through me, but also how I'm perceiving those things. What are my attitudes towards them, and how am I responding or reacting to them? And this can kind of seem unrelated to this idea of manifestation, but I think it's the larger conversation of these things and the law of attraction, because think if we work with these ideas, if we're not careful, we can kind of be spinning, and we could be chasing things that we're wanting to see show up in our life, or bring in or pull into our lives, and then we get them and we realize that it wasn't what we really wanted. And that's an important journey of just trial and error for sure. But I think we can shortcut a lot of that journey if we start tending to our hearts and our souls and our minds, and growing those things that we truly want and desire. Hey Lola. For example, if we take stock and we realize that we're experiencing a massive amount of anxiety, and we really want to live a life of deep peace and gratitude, we may have things that we think we really want and we really like, but when we start to go through the journey and the process of growing peace, of really like having a garden of peace in our inner life, and we go through that journey, we start to realize that having those things may actually create this anxiety in our life that we weren't able to see and perceive that was going to happen. And so then we start to actually crave other things, and the things that we're wanting to manifest and we're wanting to be there even change. And our kind of dreams and goals and visions and desires start to shift when we start to grow different things. But what does happen is when we grow that piece, it ends up pouring out of our lives. We end up manifesting it. And so like one thing someone may want to manifest is more loving relationships, more loving, generous relationships. And if we're not careful, I think, especially with the way that our culture is patterned, we'll try to pull it from the outside in and try to get all these loving relationships outside of ourselves and try to establish it outside of ourselves to satisfy that longing within ourselves. And it never works. It's just not the way that we're designed. It's not the way that we're wired. When we begin to actually cultivate love within ourselves, then it actually feeds into that flow in our relationship, and we're able to cultivate and pull in the more loving relationships that they'll just be attracted to us. It's that kind of law of attraction thing. But kind of most of our culture, because of the way it's designed, especially if we're constantly engaged in different forms of media, kind of the underlying message is, in order for you to be happy, you need X. That's kind of the marketing culture, is to convince us that we're not going to be satisfied, we're not going to be content unless we have this next thing. And we're going to have a fulfilling life if we can get everything outside of ourselves in this specific way. But it's just not how it works. When we are able to take kind of an internal make like an internal list and get in touch with what's happening within ourselves and where we're lacking X, Y, and Z, and then go through the journey of, okay, how do I grow those things? What does that look like? Kind of take agency in our life to do those things and to grow those things. They just pour out of our lives, and then they attract those things that we want. So yeah, that would be my little diatribe on the law of attraction, and manifesting our destiny. I think vision boards are awesome. I think when it comes to material things, I'm kind of in my own personal transition with my relationship with material world. As far as like, I guess, what would be an example? I have this dream of having a house on the coast. If I'm not careful, I can so over obsess on that one thing that I am not able to appreciate and be content with what I have right in front of me and the things that I do have that are amazing. I don't have the capacity to actually generate any kind of real gratitude and appreciation for what's right in front of me because I'm so focused on this longing for this house on the beach with, this very idealistic thing. I think it's ultimately rooted in really deep desires and things that I really love, and there's nothing wrong with it. And I think it's really beautiful. It's for me, it's part of a creative journey that is really important to me. But it's also important for me to kind of keep it in check and not get carried away with greed or lust or desire, not let it kind of pull me out of my present moment and what's right here in front of me, and being able to show up, be right there for it, and appreciate what it is. That's what's important to me, to use the language. Those are the most important things for me to be manifesting right now is contentment, gratitude, presence, more than physical material things. But I don't want to go to the ascetic kind of extreme of the material world is bad. I think the material world is where we experience a real experience of divinity, if we want to use that kind of framework to engage with things. If it's not here and now, and it's not in the material world, it's nowhere. This is what we have. This is what animates all of those ideas. When we lose our connection with that, I think we lose our ability to be a fully human, be fully human, be a full human. And we can get into what the psychological world calls disassociation. When we think that the divine or the holy or the perfect or heaven or whatever our ideal of goodness is somehow other than matter or outside any element of the full human experience, we then have a platform to very quickly disassociate and leave our experience. And I think the real richness, at least for me, has been in doing everything I can to fully show up in this and move through it, even though it can be deeply, deeply challenging. Yeah, let's see. Let's sit with that a minute and see if there's anything else I want to say on manifestation or the law of attraction. I'll say one more thing. If your garden is too full, you don't have space to grow what you want to grow. So there's this propensity in our culture to just consume, to just pile on more and more and more, to hoard all these things, and to feel like we need to have these things in order to have a meaningful life, or a life that we enjoy. And it's kind of the product of this kind of microwave culture where we want things and we want it fast and we want this quick instant gratification. And so what I think has happened is, if we take stock of our internal world and our soul, or even our relationships, or our, what the things that we own, any of that stuff, we can begin to realize that we have way more than we need. And the excess of having all of that is actually keeping us from being able to enjoy our lives, for a whole myriad of reasons. And so part of the path to a more content and peaceful and enjoyable life is actually to begin to simplify and kind of go through that journey. And if we're wanting to grow new things, sometimes we have to clear the space for it. And if we're wanting to experience different types of relationships, and sometimes we need to clear the space for that too. And if we're wanting to have new things in our life, sometimes we need to get rid of some of the old things to allow space for some of those new things to come into our life. And if we're filling our schedules from the time that we wake up in the morning to the time we go to sleep with a whole bunch of things, we don't have time to actually let those things and that we're desiring to come into our life come into our life. And so sometimes it's literally going through and gardening our lives or our souls in a way where we're saying, like, this isn't necessarily a bad thing. Maybe there are some bad things that we need to kind of weed out of our garden, but like, maybe there's just some lesser things in our life that we need to uproot and say goodbye to in order to create this space in the soil to grow these new beautiful things that we want. And understand it takes time to grow stuff. Like, anything that we get really quick can leave just as quick. So if we're wanting to manifest things and to attract things, and we're wanting them to be in our life a little bit longer, and to grow in relationship with those things and develop kind of a richer relationship with those things, like, we need to give them the space and the time to grow, instead of just hopping from one flower. We're going to grow this flower. Oh, I'm tired of this. It's just, if we're just growing these things and then discarding them, we're not really developing a whole lot of depth in our relationship with those things. And some things, may be good things just to have temporary, more quick relationships with. But when we're in a society that encourages that, and that's kind of the main mode, it probably would be good to push it a little bit longer and stay with things for a little bit more, let them grow and mature. Because from a harvest standpoint, like, you can't harvest stuff until it's ready to be harvested. So if you're just pulling that thing up and great example would be a relationship. You get into a new relationship, whether it's a romantic one or a friendship, and you're really excited, and you've got that new growth blossoming coming up, and then something happens, and there's tension, there's friction, there's unpleasant things coming up, and you're like, oh no, not this one. And you take it out and plant something new. Well, you never let that thing grow to a place where you can really see what's going to blossom and bloom, and you know, enjoy the fruit of that. And maybe it is it blossoms and bloom and the fruit's there, and this was good. I'm thankful for it, but I don't want this in my harvest next go around, and that's fine. But you didn't even know. So that's another thing, is I would say in that process of what you're attracting and growing and manifesting, being intentional to try to not uproot things too early and stay with them. So I would say that. And then the thing I will say, since I've somewhat critiqued the kind of pitfalls we can fall into these ideologies with from a surface standpoint, the thing that I love about this idea is it's a really open-handed approach. It's not the approach that says, in order for me to get things into my life, I have to go and strive and really, through my own willpower, I'm going to be able to bring in all of these big, beautiful dreams that I have and these things that I desire. But there's this understanding that when we let go of that the anxiousness underneath that effort, and we just keep putting in the effort, and we garden and we plant, and we water, but we let that process of those things coming into our lives come, we get things that we didn't even know that we wanted, and we didn't even know that we needed. And so we're kind of putting our intentions in, and we're moving towards, we're kind of like, we're not just lazy. We're not just like sitting back, relaxing, waiting for everything to come to us in an entitled kind of posture, but we're leaning in, we're doing that, but we're also knowing that it's way more enjoyable for us to just receive these things and receive this abundance than it is to try to strive and manipulate and try to get these things out of our own volition. So I love this about the whole stream of the Abraham Hicks stuff and, the law of attraction and all this, is that there's still this nod to a energy or flow that's greater than ourselves. And this practice of trusting that for these things to kind of come into our life. And that's a very countercultural exercise for us to do, to wait for those things to come, to wait for those things to grow, instead of trying to do something we can to like catalyze that process and make it happen really quick. And if we really sit and reflect on that, it's just out of anxiety. It's out of a lack of contentment, a lack of being able to just be with things where they are and enjoy them where they are. And always needing it to be better, always needing it to, be more perfect, be more beautiful, more whatever. And so this ability to say, I have these longings and desires, and I'm going to do the work to try to grow these things in my life and create the space for them to come into my life. But I'm going to let it happen as it's going to happen. I'm going to let it happen more organically than try to force it and try to grab it. And that moment or that movement, it creates a really different momentum. It creates a really different presence in the things when they do come. And it allows us to experience a gratitude, a level of gratitude that we couldn't have if we were able to just take the credit for all of the things that came to us. We wouldn't have the space to really lean into this gratitude for what's there, what was given, what we received. And I do believe that kind of giving and receiving is a huge part of a real vibrant spiritual life, a real vibrant relational life with people, time, money, the kind of whole of the human experience. So I'll land the plane there for today. Thanks for the topic, Karley. It's definitely one that I'm in and around a lot in the circles I like to swim in. The kind of tribes, the different spiritual ideologies and groups of people. This comes up a lot, and it's actually in every religion. It's kind of hard baked into nature, and it's something fun to think about and reflect on, and then watch happen. It's been something I've really enjoyed going through the process of bringing into my life. And so again, if you have any other thoughts, or you have read a lot about this and have other perspectives, or more robust perspective, please let me know. If you just hate all of this and disagree with me, please let me know too. Leave it in the comments. We have some fun conversations about it. That's okay. If you've been watching for the last almost 40 minutes and you're still locked in, thanks. I appreciate it. And I hope that you would have some thoughts that you would share with me if you watched for this long. And happy 4th of July, whatever that means to you. I hope at the least you're able to enjoy being with the people that matter to you. And I will say that I think for people that are really disenchanted with our government, a practice that would be really good today would be to think of a couple positive things about our country. And not that we have to ignore the things that we don't like, but to be able to embrace the things that are beautiful is really good for us, and I think is a really wonderful thing to focus on, especially when there's kind of just right in front of our face a lot of not so fun things to think about and look at. So anyways, cheers. Hope you all have a wonderful day.